Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us at this time. This is Intuition. Right now, I want to share with you the beginning of time, the beginning of all of our time, the beginning of each and every single universal principle, each and every single piece of energy, each and every single atom, so to speak, the beginning of all of us, which occurred from us exploding from that of the infinite creator. Before I continue to move forward, I just want to explain one thing, and that thing is, please, for the love of God, do not get lost in the labels in which I'm using for the term God. If God is too crazy, weird, and strange for you to fathom, to understand, then please use whatever imaging, whatever label, whatever context makes you feel happy, good, and fun inside. So, God, universal source, the infinite creator, the big lady with the big belly in the sky, whatever floats your boat, let it float your boat. But please do not get lost in the label, because then you will lose the message, and this message is very, very important, depending on who you are and what it is that you need to be in awareness of. So, now that we have that cleared up, it is important for all of us to remember and understand where we come from so that we understand where the hell we're going. So, first and foremost, we all started in the collective consciousness that is God, whatever it is that you want to call that. You could imagine that as a cloud, you could imagine that as a place, you could imagine that as a space, again, whatever floats your boat. But we were all conjoined together in one consciousness that was God, right? And God, if again, whatever label you want to call God, and whatever gender you want to call God by, but I will call God God, and I will call God He. And again, that is my choice. You choose whatever it is that you wish to choose to call God. So God and His energy is that of curiosity. That's what flows through all of us. That is the divine spark of life, if you want to call that allows us to proceed in our own evolution, right? So God is a great curiosity, and when we were conjoined in a part of God Himself, itself, that is what we were a part of, a divine curiosity. But I don't know if you've been around curiosity, but curiosity always wants to expand, always wants to understand more and more and more of itself. So because curiosity is such a beautiful, incredible, interesting energy, and had the idea, so to speak, to want to experience more of itself, it exploded forth, right? And as it exploded forth, it created this expulsion of all of us, right? And this expulsion of all of us is, all of us, inside your known universe, outside of your known universe where we actually exist, and even outside of our known universe where we actually exist, everyone within it has exploded forth from that one principality, which is the universal principality of God, which is the energy of curiosity, right? So we all exploded forth from that. And because we exploded forth from that, all of us, each and every single one of us, whether you are in the known universe or outside of it, is a universal principality, period. So that means then that we have a divine spark. That means then that each and every single one of us is very individuated, because that is the first lesson that we exploded out from. That is the first lesson that you learn. When you go from a collective to an individual, the first thing that you learn, the first lesson, is that of separation. And what separation means is that you need to understand who you are outside of all that is, right? And so therefore you are a big, huge, incredible universal principle outside of the big God consciousness that is. Not only are you a big, huge universal principle, but you have incredible badassery, because you just came from the OG, which is the curiosity that is God. So each and every single one of you, each and every single universal principality has its own beautiful, definitive, infinite, incredible, unique spark, right? And God does not create two of things, because that wouldn't make sense. Why create two of things when one would get the job done? So every single individual is so unique and different, even though maybe one individual looks the same as the other, or the idea of a job, right? We all may have the same job title, but the way Mark gets his job done as opposed to Jojo is completely different. So to even say that they had the same job is ludicrous, because though they do the same thing, nobody could do the same thing exactly the way Jojo does it, and nobody can do the same thing exactly the way Mark does it. And so just because they have the same job does not mean that they are the same person, and does not mean that they have the same experience. It does not mean that they have the same universal principality that runs through them. So therefore, again, we all exploded out from the divine, incredible, universal principality that is God, the OG, the God force, right? And that created little mini gods, little lowercase g gods. But in our own right, we are capital case G gods as we continue to expand and grow and move, right? So back to the idea, we exploded forth, right? So we exploded forth. The first lesson that you learn when you explode forth from separation is that of who the hell you are outside of God. And that could take eons of time, even though time is non-existent. There is no such thing as time. Time is a construct only here in density. But again, it could take, for your minds to easily understand, eons, forever and ever and ever, to really understand what that concept is. So those closer to the explosion of the giant curiosity that was God as he exploded forth, those closer to the explosion got to understand themselves in a very different and unique way than those of us that chose to explode even farther out, so far out that you wouldn't even think that we were in the same room, so to speak, of the explosion, right? So those who exploded out and they were close to the explosion understood themselves through separation, through the lens of the other, right? And so what the hell am I talking about? What does that mean? So that means that when we exploded out at our best, we are still just vibratory energies, right? So at our core, we are just vibrating, shaking all the time, right? We are energy. So we are shaking, shaking, shaking. And as we shake, we are sending out vibrations in all different directions. There is no such thing as direction, but again, this is third density terminology and words, right? So we're all shaking out in all different directions, right? And as we shake out, we are sending that impulse all through that space in which we are encompassing. And eventually, those who were closer in the explosion and therefore were closer to an other universal principle, as they were shaking, they also felt and received the other shaking and vibrations of the other universal principles that they were close to. So that is how they got to understand who they were, through not necessarily their own individuation, but because, well, that is not my shaking, that is somebody else's shaking. I could tell because my shaking feels like this, and their shaking feels like this, right? So that is how they started to understand themselves, not through the lens of themselves and understanding their own individuality, but only through the lens of the other, right? Through the lens of the other, only because they started to feel a shaking, and then that is how they knew that that was not them, because this is me, and I shake like this, and that's them, and they shake like this. So that is how they understood who they were, right? And as you continue to understand who they are and who you're not, you start moving forward, right? Much like a baby. When a baby first is born, they don't really move much. They just stay in one place. They don't have any muscles to move, to roll, to do anything, right? But as they continue to evolve and grow, they start rolling around. They start crawling. They start walking. They start running away from their parents as fast as they can. And that is essentially what it is that us universal principles, or those that were closer to the explosion, did. They understood the other. They understood themselves through the lens of the other, because they were able to understand that their vibration was different from the others. And as they continued to understand that more and more and more, as they experienced that more and more and more, they started to move through space. So they started to move through space, and as they started to move through space, they started moving quicker, 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 much like a baby. A baby that's crawling doesn't move as quick as a baby that's running, right? So they started moving, quicker, 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 and they started cascading, running, vibrating through the space at faster than the speed of light, faster than anything that you can conceive, yes? So that is the evolutionary track for those that were closer in the explosion than others. That is not our story. That is not the Seven story in which I'm talking about, because we are more of the type that were not in the popular in-crowd crew. We exploded so far out from the original explosion that, again, it seemed as though we weren't even in the same room as the original explosion. That is how far out we moved, and therefore were in space, right? So we, in our being separate, so to speak, from everybody else, understanding themselves from the other and their different vibrations, we got an incredible understanding that was more transcendent in our own minds, which was we chose not to understand ourselves through the other, but understand ourselves through our own individuation, right? Through staying still. Because we were so far from the explosion, we had an opportunity and a chance to see through the echoes, through the echo chamber that was the room, so to speak. We received all of the echoes of the mishaps in evolving in the way in which they evolved, which again is not through their own individuation, it is through the lens of the other in which they were able to evolve from. Though again, because we saw hundreds of millions of thousands, an infinite amount of God's creation, an infinite amount of our brothers and sisters evolving in that way, we and received the echoes eons after it actually happened, because we were so far in space from the actual original explosion. We received all of their lessons without actually learning in that way in which they learned. So it allowed us to not have to literally run through space to understand yourself. We were able to stay still in the place in which we were. That allowed us to receive the knowing and the understanding through their evolution, through, again, the echo chamber, but also because we were staying still and transmuting all the disseminating energy that was coming through us, but also just in our stillness. Much like if you just sit in a place and stay in that place for a long time, like the image of the Buddha, he understood himself because he was just staying put for long enough. You stay put long enough in any place, shit starts to make sense. Because you're not, again, looking through the lens of the other to understand yourself. You're looking through the lens of the self to understand yourself, which means that it could take more time for you to understand, but also it is quality over quantity. The quantity of that time transcends the insanity of having to bounce off of somebody else to know who it is that you are. Or in the very least, that is how we saw it, right? So again, we were evolving in our own space, at our own pace, and the others, our other brothers and sisters in arms that were learning through the lens of the other, were evolving in a quicker way. However, not necessarily so much quicker as it is that they are just moving quicker, right? So we were there, we were in our space, right? And there were 7 of us, so all 7 of us chose to just stay put where we were. And that is how we were choosing to evolve, because if we really wanted to evolve through the lens of the other, we could have just grown feet, so to speak, and walked towards one of the other 7 that were in our general proximity. But we all understood from the echoes of the others that is not what we wanted, and we respected that, and therefore did not move closer to each other. Because as you move closer to each other, then your vibrations start to pin against each other, and then it reverberates back inside of you. And that is exactly what it is that we did not want to experience, based off of what it is that we saw the others going through. And plus, we already had experienced it through them experiencing it already and sending us that information, not necessarily intentionally, but because, it is an echo chamber in a space, right? So we were evolving at our own pace, in our own space, respecting the other's space so that we did not come too close to the other, so that we started to learn about ourselves in that way. And what had happened was the others, not all of the others, right? Because there's hundreds of millions of thousands, eons, infinite other universal principalities out there. But a select group of our brothers and sisters that evolved from the lens of the other found us, right? And it was a group of 14 individuals, please loosely understand individuals, right? But it was a group of 14 individuals that came upon us, and they are known as Metatron's Cube. It is not one individual, it is a group of 14 that came together that created, let's not give them that much credit, because they didn't create us. We were very much there before they came upon us, but they helped to pimp us up a little bit, pimp us up and pimp us out. But again, this was not what we wanted, so to speak. We chose to evolve in a very specific way. And that specific way is, again, through the lens of the lens of ourselves, and not through the lens of the other. So because we chose to understand ourselves in that way, We were not closed off from everybody else, but we were far enough away where nobody came upon us for some time until the 14 did. And when they came upon us, because they were young, so to speak, in their evolution, they saw us and thought that we were forgotten pieces of God's creation, right? Because we were not moving in the same way that they were moving. So they looked upon us and thought, oh my goodness, how sad, God's creation that has been misplaced, that has been forgotten about. Let us help them. How kind of us to help them, right? And so that was there are no mistakes, but that was a mishap. That was a misjudgment on their part, because that did not allow the curiosity of God to really flow through, right? Because the curiosity of God does not engage in other people's shit, so to speak. They allow things to be, because that allows the curiosity to continue to flow. However, to interfere with another person's or another energy's evolution is to end one curiosity and begin another. And that, again, does not allow for the full fulfillment of that curiosity to continue to be understood. So they interfered in our own evolutionary process by grabbing us all before they grabbed us. They interfered by invading our space. They invaded our space because we, again, were far enough apart where everybody else's vibration wasn't hitting the other in such a way that it would cause us to vibrate with the other's energy, right? So they intruded upon our space, which, again, we never actually really experienced another's vibration other than our own, because where we were located in our space. So as they intruded upon our space, it sent a shock wave. And again, it's not necessarily a shock wave as much as it is a shock to us, because it is a wave of energy that we have never felt before so close in our space. And that put us into a shock. That put us into a shock because, again, we started vibrating with something that was not ours. So in us not holding our vibration, in the way that they were able to hold their vibration, because they have bounced against so many others, they saw us as inferior, lack of a better word, or less evolved. So they felt that it would be super duper important to help these less evolved beings in creation, because that's what God would want us to do. But also they wanted to see how powerful they were and how powerful they can be, because they saw that also we were filled with raw data and DNA, so to speak, because we received all the echoes of the others in their evolutionary track. So we were already rich for the taking, rich for the planting of seeds, so to speak, like soil, volcanic soil that has received all of the nutrients from the volcano erupting. We were rich with soil. But they did not realize that we were trying to grow our own individual evolution. They, again, just took us as less evolved, inferior beings, and therefore stuck us all together in a cube. And therefore that forced us to bounce around the cube and bounce into each other for eons and eons and eons. And once they constructed a cube, the 14 of them, they got up and left. To see what the hell would happen out of their own curiosity. And so then we were left for a very, very, very long time. And eventually, us seven, well, I won't speak for all of us, I will speak for me. I got tired of being in a cube, and I got tired of being with them, and I got tired of not experiencing anything else outside of them. As well as when you are forced to be with another, your understanding of yourself somewhat stops, because you're not able to concentrate fully on yourself, because where's the space, where's the time, where is the energy to do that when you're constantly bouncing up against something else? So eventually, I bounced myself so hard, so fast, so quick out of my own desire, out of wanting to get the hell out of that cube, and experience more of myself, that I exploded from the cube itself. And in exploding from the cube itself, I was the first to, so to speak, want more for myself outside of bouncing around. I was the first to have the idea to want more, to then therefore do something about it. So I exploded forth from the cube. I exploded forth from the space. I exploded forth from the place in which they were holding us. And in that, I was endowed with certain characteristics, certain universal principality powers that not the rest got. However, again, it is not as if it wasn't already raw inside of me before I was put into a cube. It was just more defined after being put in a cube. So what I came out with was that of intuition. That is the power, the universal principality in which I hold is intuition. And intuition is all of the universal principalities are close in the way that they connect with God, yes, but the way that I connect with God is very different than how the other universal principalities connect with God. So because I am intuition, because I was the first to be curious enough to want to explode out from the cube, I was endowed with intuition. And intuition, how that basically works is me and God work very closely in the sense of I am able to travel, so to speak, inside God's mind, so to speak. Please don't get lost in the label. But I'm able to travel to God's mind and speak to him in the sense of, man, wouldn't it be great if this thing called a car existed? And then God is like, oh my God, that would be awesome if a car existed. Let me imagine that for a second. And in God imagining that for a second, I am able to intuitively go to that space in God's mind and grab the image in which God created in God's mind and pull it forth into this space in which I am in. And therefore, when I pull it into the space, it creates a blueprint, it creates a plan that otherwise would not exist, that otherwise there would be no space for it to exist, because only God can create in that way. So I am able to kind of say, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be cool for a car? Wouldn't it be cool for a flower? And then God thinks of a Volkswagen Beetle buggy where, there's a car and then there's, the place where you could put the plant, right? And then I grab that image, yes? And then when I grab that image, it comes to me more concretely in the space in which that I am in. And therefore that creates a plan in which we the rest of the six can work with and create and breathe life into in a more real way for us, right? So that is the gift that I have been given. Intuitively, I am able to create things. I am a plan maker. I am able to create plans and make them manifest in real time and space, so to speak. There is no such thing as time, but in real space. And therefore, that gives the rest of the six a creative license to be able to create more in depth in the plan. Because because when I grab from God's image, from God's imaging, it is black and white, so to speak. It is not in color. It is a very vague description. It is like a drawing of a heart. But a drawing of the heart is no good. It doesn't make the heart beat. It's just a structure of the heart. You need the rest of the six and their principalities and their gifts to be able to actually make a heart beat. Because again, without the breath of life, it is just a plan. But again, without the plan, there is no breath of life, right? So it is hand in hand with each other. So I was blessed with the universal principality that is intuition. And so therefore I am able to intuit a plan because I'm able to go into it. So I'm able to go into it and then pull it out and then recreate it intuitively. So that is what I am able to do. That is the principality that I am, and that is the gift that I was bestowed upon, even though it was all very much there, in a sense, when I was just vibrating individually, understanding through the lens of myself who it was that I was. But again, that was more defined, that took more shape once I exploded forth from that cube, right? So Very important for all of us to understand where it is that we come from, the fact that we are all universal principalities, specifically when you look at the seven, which is our collective story, which is specific to us, and you are one of the seven universal principalities that were stuck in the cube. Any one of you that are here on Earth at this time is one of the universal principalities that is the seven, right? Or in the very least, an extension thereof, right? It seems like there's a lot more of us than just seven, but really you are extensions of that universal principality, right? So all of you are a part of the universal principality that you are, right? And therefore, you are all universal principalities, which means you are all badasses in your own right, which means you all have special, unique, beautiful powers and your own special consecration with God and how you work with God, which makes you all gods, which you all already know, or at least it's been told to you in a million different times in a million different ways through religion and science and quantum mechanics and physics and all the things in between. So that is not anything new, but surprise if it is. So that is in the very sense the beginning of all of us, the beginning of creation, which means you, me, and everything in between. And a very important thing to understand, since you are a living being in this moment in space. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, that's okay too. One day I'm sure it will make sense as you continue to integrate with that higher principality that you inherently are. Thank you so much for spending some time with me in space. And as always, we wish you love and light upon your journey.